she bought broke his heart. The rain tapped softly against the tall windows of Edward Langston's mansion. It was a quiet evening in late autumn, the kind where the air felt heavy with the promise of winter. The sprawling estate sat on the edge of a sleepy town, surrounded by oaks that swayed gently in the wind. Inside, the house was warm, filled with the faint scent of polished wood and old books. Edward, a millionaire in his late 50s, sat in his favorite leather armchair by the fireplace. The flames cast a golden glow across his face, softening the lines etched by years of ambition. Edward had built his fortune through tech startups, each one more successful than the last. But success had come at a cost. His days were long, filled with meetings and decisions, leaving little room for family or friends. Now, in the quiet of his mansion, he often felt the weight of loneliness. The grand rooms, with their marble floors and crystal chandeliers, seemed to echo with emptiness. Across the room, Clara, his maid of 5 years, dusted a row of porcelain figurines on the mantel. Clara was in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile that never seemed to fade, even after long hours of work. She moved with care, her hands steady as she polished each delicate piece. Edward watched her quietly, noticing the way she hummed softly to herself, a tune he didn't recognize but found soothing. Clara was more than a maid to Edward. She was a constant in his life, someone who listened when he spoke, who laughed at his dry jokes, and who never seemed to judge him for his wealth or his solitude. Over the years, he had come to trust her deeply. She knew the house better than he did, from the creaky floorboard in the hallway to the exact spot where the morning sun hit the dining room table. She was, in many ways, the heart of the home. That evening, as the rain grew heavier, Edward felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was the season, or the way the firelight danced on the walls, but he wanted to do something kind, something meaningful. He looked at Clara, who was now arranging a vase of fresh lilies, and an idea formed. "Clara," he said, his voice soft but clear. She turned, her duster pausing in midair. "Yes, Mr. Langston." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black credit card. The firelight glinted off its surface. "I want you to take this," he said, holding it out to her. "Go buy something for yourself. Something you've always wanted. No limit." Clara's eyes widened. She set the duster down slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Langston, I couldn't. That's too much. Please," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "You work so hard. You deserve something special. I trust you." She stared at the card, her fingers hovering as if afraid to touch it. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and the steady rhythm of the rain. Finally, she took the card, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll think about it." Edward smiled, a rare warmth spreading through him. "Take your time," he said. "There's no rush." The next morning, Clara arrived at the mansion as usual, her face calm but thoughtful. Edward noticed she seemed quieter, her movements slower, as if her mind was elsewhere. He didn't ask about the card. He wanted her to feel free, unpressured. Days passed, and life in the mansion continued its quiet rhythm. Clara cleaned, cooked, and tended to the house, while Edward buried himself in work, though he found himself wondering what she might choose. A week later, Clara approached him in the study. The room was dimly lit, with shelves of books stretching to the ceiling. Edward was at his desk, papers scattered before him. He looked up as she entered, her hands clasped tightly together. "Mr. Langston," she said softly, "I used the card." His heart lifted. He leaned back in his chair, a small smile forming. "Good," he said. "What did you get? Something nice, I hope." Clara's eyes flickered with something he couldn't read, nervousness, perhaps, or sadness. I'd like to show you," she said. "It's not here. It's in town. Could you come with me?" Edward raised an eyebrow, intrigued. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd imagined a new dress, a piece of jewelry, maybe a trip somewhere warm. But the look in Clara's eyes told him this was different. "Of course," he said, standing. "Let's go." The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and clean. They drove in Edward's sleek black car, the countryside rolling by in shades of gold and brown. Clara was quiet, her hands folded in her lap, the credit card tucked safely in her purse. Edward didn't press her for details. He sensed she needed space, and he was content to let the moment unfold. They arrived in the heart of the small town, where cobblestone streets wound past quaint shops and a stone church with a steeple that pierced the gray sky. Clara led him to a narrow alley, where a small building stood, its windows covered with faded curtains. A sign above the door read, "Hope House." Edward frowned, unfamiliar with the place. Clara pushed open the door, and they stepped inside. The air smelled of fresh paint and warm bread. The room was small but bright, with colorful murals on the walls and mismatched furniture arranged in a cozy circle. A group of children, no older than 10, sat at a long table, drawing with crayons. An older woman with gray hair smiled at Clara, then at Edward. "Clara," one of the children called, a girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. She ran over and hugged Clara's legs. Clara laughed softly, kneeling to return the hug. Edward stood frozen, his heart tightening. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice low. Clara stood, her eyes meeting his. "Hope House is a shelter," she said. "For kids whose families can't take care of them right now. Some are foster kids, some are just lost. They come here for meals, a safe place to play, maybe a little hope." Edward's gaze swept the room. He noticed the worn books on a shelf, the patched blankets folded neatly in a corner, the way the children's faces lit up when Clara spoke to them. He felt a lump in his throat. "And the card?" he asked, though he was beginning to understand. Clara's voice was steady but soft. "I used it to fix this place up. New paint, new furniture, art supplies, books, food for the kitchen, blankets for the cold nights. I didn't want anything for myself. These kids, they need it more." Edward's chest ached. He had given her the card expecting her to treat herself, to indulge in something frivolous or beautiful. Instead, she had poured his money into this tiny haven, a place he hadn't even known existed. He felt a mix of emotions, admiration, guilt, and something deeper, something that stung. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara looked down, her fingers twisting together. "I didn't want you to think I was taking advantage. You gave me the card to make me happy, and this makes me happy. Helping them." Edward turned away, his eyes burning. He thought of his mansion, filled with things he rarely noticed, art he didn't admire, furniture he didn't use. And here was Clara, who had taken his wealth and given it meaning. He felt a tear slip down his cheek, and he wiped it away quickly, hoping she didn't see. The older woman, who introduced herself as Margaret, the shelter's director, joined them. "Clara's been a blessing," she said warmly. "She's here every week, even after working all day. The kids love her. And what she did with your donation, it's changed everything." Edward nodded, unable to speak. He watched as Clara sat with the children, helping a boy color a picture of a tree. Her laughter was soft, genuine, and it filled the room with warmth. He realized then that Clara had given him something too, a glimpse of a world beyond his own, a reminder of what truly mattered. They stayed for an hour, Edward listening as the children chattered about their drawings and their dreams. One boy wanted to be an astronaut. A girl dreamed of opening a bakery. Edward felt his heart shift, as if a door long closed was creaking open. When they returned to the mansion, the silence felt different, not heavy, but peaceful. Edward sat in his armchair, the fire crackling once more. Clara stood by the door, ready to leave for the night. "Clara," he said, his voice steady now. "Thank you for showing me Hope House. For everything." She smiled, her eyes bright. "Thank you for trusting me, Mr. Langston." He shook his head. "Call me Edward." Her smile widened, and she nodded. "Good night, Edward." As the door closed behind her, Edward leaned back, staring into the fire. He thought of the children, of Clara's quiet kindness, of the emptiness he'd felt for so long. Tomorrow, he would call his lawyer. He would set up a fund for Hope House, something permanent. And maybe, just maybe, he would visit again, not as a stranger, but as someone who belonged. The rain began to fall again, a gentle patter against the windows. But inside, the mansion felt a little less lonely, a little more like home.